All right, I started recording.
Yes.
And okay, so once again, hi Rishi. Thank you for joining me
Jasur,
for
how are you?
this. Good. How are you? How's everything?
I'm good.
So yeah, as I was saying, thank you very much for joining me for this call, and a little bit of introduction for the audience. Guys, this is Rishi from UK right now. And Rishi and me, we did many videos back before the pandemic, actually, when he used to live in Shanghai, also run his own company, consultancy. And so today I invited Rishi to talk about his kind of services, and at the same time, we will be discussing some citizenship options through investment in some of the European countries. And so if you guys have any questions after the interview, you can leave in the comment section below, and or contact Rishi's company or our company directly. We're going to leave the contact details below this video. So once again, Rishi, I'm going to pass the microphone to you. So please introduce yourself, and then we can start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasur, for having me. Hello, everybody. Hello to all my clients and all of Jasur's clients. My name is Rishi Harani. I run a company called Shanghai Univesco. So I was based in Shanghai just before the pandemic, and also during the pandemic for a little while. So I run my own corporate consultancy, business designing consultancy firm. Then I branched out into Indonesia and Singapore, Malaysia. Currently, I'm here in the UK since October 2021 and expanding my business here in the European market. So focusing on the citizenship by investment programs for the EU, for my Asian clients and anybody who's looking for such an investment program. So that's pretty much my outline. I will be leaving my details in Jasur's video. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself. My team will be more than happy to help out and reach out. So yeah, Jasur, if you have any questions, go for it, and let's just start off.
Sure. Recently, I've been watching your Instagram and Facebook. I know that you traveled a lot through Europe. So why don't we just start from that? How's the situation in terms of travel in Europe right now? Because we are in China, in Shanghai. Although it's Shanghai are relatively flexible and also relatively safe in terms of COVID and stuff like that. But still, we have a little bit of control when it comes to travel. You need to have green code and stuff like that. So how's the situation in Europe?
So since October 2020, I have been going on a trip once a month. So I'm currently maintaining my target. In the EU, as per the EU directive, you just need a COVID pass, EU COVID pass. So basically with the NHS here in the UK, we scan our 2 QR codes, dose 1, dose 2, and then that becomes 1 QR code. And then there's this particular app, the EU app COVID pass. And then as long as you have that pass. So a couple of months ago, I was in Hungary. I flew over to Budapest. From there, I drove to Austria. No checks whatsoever. All they checked was my COVID pass. That's it. No passport, no driving license, nothing whatsoever. Benefits of traveling within the EU, it's all pretty much the same, as long as you have your COVID pass. During Omicron, we did have for a little while, for a couple of weeks, where we had to have the rapid antigen test if we were flying.
Yeah.
But it was all that. And then since the unfortunate war broke out in Russia and Ukraine, and then pretty much people have forgotten about COVID now. It's mostly just a war. And as long as you have your NHS COVID pass, but nobody really checks, especially in London or in UK, we don't have a lockdown as such. We don't have any restrictions. As long as you have a COVID pass, and even the mask mandate has ended yesterday at Heathrow Airport as well.
Oh, that's great.
So things are pretty much like, leveling out. We're learning to live with COVID now. And fortunately or unfortunately, here in the UK, even if you test positive, there's no legal requirement to self-isolate.
Oh, this is also
in the UK. In the UK. But it's up to the judgment of the people to stay at home. But COVID now, with the antibiotics, with the medication, people are recovering. Cases are quite high in the UK, don't get me wrong, 65, 70,000. But death rate and hospitalization is very, very low because of the increased booster efficiency. We're about 70-75% boosted, the population, and at least 76% fully dosed, like a fully vaccinated population here in the UK. So it's quite good. Traveling within the EU, it's pretty much the same. you have a mask in your pocket, to be very honest. And if they want you to put on the mask, you put on the mask. I was in Spain 2 weeks ago. I was in this particular park in Barcelona and I had my mask in my pocket. I was asked, please put on the mask. I'm like, here you go. That's it.
Right,
But
right,
when you take pictures, you just take it off. So people are becoming more and more lenient now. Because of course, like, you're going to eat in a cafe, you're going to drink coffee in a cafe,
Sure,
you have to take the mask off. So it's getting quite good, and we're learning to live with that. So that's also a good point here.
Okay, thank you for this introduction. Now, coming back to the main topic, let's pick a country, for example, from the European Union that you recently traveled to, and then we can discuss some of the ups and downs. And also, I want to bring this, news as well. Like European Union is considering to get rid of the golden visa schemes and especially citizenship by program schemes. I know that it's not finalized yet, but the European Parliament is definitely discussing that. So what is your view on that? This is number one question. And number two is we can maybe pick Spain as an example and then compare it to other countries. Yep.
Sure. So to answer your question, I wasn't aware of that particular news, to be very honest, but now that you mentioned, I believe it's going to be a little tough. Even though it's gone into the European Parliament, it's going to be a while before it's passed as a law, because European Union consists of 27, 28 countries. And the problem is all of them have their own sovereignty up to a certain extent.
Sure.
So even though because of the war and the sanctions on the Russian oligarchs and this and that, so this is one of the reasons why they're trying to maybe get rid of this particular scheme. However, it's going to be difficult because certain countries' economies depends upon investments by foreigners, foreign investment by rich individuals, highly sophisticated investors.
Sure.
And to basically seize a particular scheme, which generates a lot of revenue for that particular country, it's going to be very difficult to do so. That's my personal opinion. So I don't see that that scheme ending anytime soon. Because even with COVID, for example, vaccination, it took us a couple of years to get that into effect. And that's just something health related. So for this, I don't really see it happening, at least for 5 years.
Sure. And just to add something, my perspective as well, even if they end this, I've been always telling this, argument of mine, even if they end citizenship by investment programs or golden visa programs and stuff like that, people with money, like the investors, business people, entrepreneurs, they can still use the standard route. For example, Germany doesn't have this investment citizenship by investment program, for example, but there are always ways around it, like in every country in Europe, or when you talk about the US and Canada as well. So what I'm talking about is you can establish a company, like run it a few months, or at least six months or a year, hire some staff, and then sponsor yourself with a work visa, like a normal person, the owner of the company or a director, and then you can relocate yourself and your family to that country through this standard, very standard and very much possible way. So I'm thinking, even if they end these programs in, for example, Netherlands or Greece or Spain or whatever, you can still have this standard option. You can just start a company and do the required investment and improve your profile, qualify for the European work permit. It is possible.
So this has always been the case, to be honest, that particular standard route where you have a company, establish yourself a business, you focus on that business. And Ireland, so in Ireland, there's like a couple of routes to get that citizenship by investment. And one of that is basically establishing a company and launching a particular product or a service, which benefits the Irish economy. So if you're bringing jobs to a country, and jobs are gold dust basically in this part of the world, if you're increasing jobs for a particular economy, increasing tax revenue, of course the government will want you. So at the end of the day, they might end where you bring tons of cash and give me a passport, but then they'll be like, I want to establish a business, I want to create 100 jobs, 500 jobs. They're like, yeah, of course, come. And that's how all these rich investors, global rich investors, high net worth individuals, establish themselves in particular EU countries.
Yeah. The only difference probably be is you will not be getting that, unlimited visa immediately, like golden visa scheme, or permanent residency immediately. That is the only difference. So when you use this standard route, you establish a company, create some jobs for the local people, and you are still able to apply for work visa, which leads you to the permanent residency. And then after permanent residency, you will be able to apply for citizenship. So, but of course,
And also that particular work visa allows you to stay in that particular country. So you're establishing yourself in that particular country or doing business in that country. And also your kids maybe are able to go to that if you have kids to go to local schools, universities. So you're basically creating a new home for yourself. So of course, it's quite highly advantageous from that point of view.
Sure. Okay, so let's start by discussing maybe comparing Spain for citizenship by investment or relocation to Ireland, for example. I know, by the way, you can talk about your like background as well, growing up in Ireland and then living in the UK. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So everybody, I'm a naturalized Irish citizen. I grew up in Ireland from the age of 6 to the age of 22. Then I moved to the UK for my master's. Then after my master's in the UK, I was living in Ireland in the UK. Then my journey to China and Asia started. So I have quite an extensive amount of knowledge in terms of Irish investment by citizenship by investment program, and also the know-how of the Irish government, know-how of the Irish education system, and overall just about Ireland. I am going to compare Jasur between Ireland and Portugal because Spain, although good in terms of citizenship by investment, I believe Portugal has more advantages than Spain.
Sure.
So I'll talk about Portugal versus Ireland today for this video. We can talk about Spain and the other program like Cyprus and all those other countries in a different video.
Okay.
So to all your clients and my clients, all the viewers of this particular video, I would suggest, personally, I would suggest Ireland due to the fact that of the access to an EU healthcare system, English-speaking country, and it's one of the first world economies which is very highly correlated to the UK British economy.
Yeah.
So as per the Easter Agreement, Good Friday Agreement of 1973, Ireland is part of CTA, Common Travel Area. So Isle of Man, Ireland, Northern Ireland, UK are all part of one particular area. So even when we had the Omicron pandemic, traveling between the UK and Ireland, we were not required to show a proof of rapid antigen or a PCR, negative PCR test, because that's how they are interlinked.
Yeah.
Being an Irish citizen, I am allowed to vote in the British local and the national elections. So when we have the elections for the local mayor in London, I'm allowed to vote in that.
Wow.
But someone from Romania or Portugal or Spain or any of those other EU countries are not allowed to vote. And also access to the British healthcare system, the NHS healthcare system, access to the British education system as an Irish citizen. So when I have kids in the future, my kids will be allowed to access the UK's education system, the fact that they'll be my kids and I have an Irish passport. So that is one of the biggest advantages of having an Irish passport. Although the investment is higher, substantially higher than the Portuguese one, but the benefits and the pros weigh the cons and the disadvantages.
Right.
So we'll talk about more into detail of Ireland versus Portugal. Personally, I would suggest Ireland. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me.
Of course. Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. So why I would suggest Ireland, not just the healthcare, not just the education, it's an English-speaking country. Ireland allows growth. It's one of those capitalist economies, Jasur, where if you establish yourself a business, bringing a new product or bringing in a new service, creating 10 jobs minimum, and maintaining that certain minimum investment requirements, what that allows you to get a PR, a permanent residency program for 2 years. Utilizing that permanent residency program, you're establishing yourself in that country, your business, your kids going to the local universities or schools. And what that allows is after 5 years eligible for applying for citizenship. Irish passport is one of the coveted passports across the globe. Access to 185 countries, visa-free or visa on arrival, which includes the US, which includes Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all the Commonwealth countries, of course, all of EU, all of US, Canada, whatever, okay? The countries where you need a visa, of course, are like China and so on and so forth. But again, getting a visa. I had an Irish passport, living in China, not an issue. Getting my Chinese or residence permit or work visa. So that is one of the biggest advantages of having an Irish passport. It's a global passport. It's a global travel document. So that is one of the biggest advantages.
Sure.
Another advantage is that, fortunately for me, when you're expanding your business just into different parts of the world, as let's say compared to like Mexico or something, when you show an Irish passport in Hong Kong or Singapore or one of those financial institutions, financial cities, to open a bank account or a company, it's very, very straightforward and very easy.
Sure.
So you don't face the regulatory scrutiny as you would face on a Mexican passport, or let's say even a Central Asian passport.
Yeah.
And I have a client from Mexico. Every single time we have this issue when we are trying to open a bank account, he's trying to expand his business in Hong Kong, in UK, whatever. The fact that the Mexican passport flashes, it becomes an issue. When I say an issue, of course, we're able to overcome that issue, but it is one of those hurdles. Whereas with an Irish passport, it's smooth sail.
Yeah.
So that is one of the advantages of having an EU passport. It gives you access to a global world, globalization. You're able to expand your businesses. Another benefit of expanding into Ireland and establishing yourself in Ireland is the low corporation tax rate of 12.5%.
That is one of the lowest ones, actually. Yeah.
It is one of the lowest ones, exactly. So FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, all your tech companies from the US have established themselves. Do you know, Jasur, that Apple reroutes all its European profits through Ireland, even though the sales of Apple products in Ireland are minuscule compared to all of EU? Because Irish population is what, 5.5 million. So how many iPhones, iPads, MacBooks are you going to sell?
Sure.
But they reroute the profits due to the low corporation. As you work in corporate restructuring, you understand why they do that. So that is one of the biggest advantages of Ireland. Trinity College in Dublin, it's one of the finest universities in the world. It's in the top 100 universities of the world.
Yeah.
It is basically Irish Oxford or Cambridge, one of the best universities in terms of educational credibility, in terms of the university life, in terms of securing jobs, in terms of expanding your network and your base in Ireland. So to expand yourself, to get that program, to go into Ireland, you're on the system, your kids going to fine high schools or Trinity College, for example, fine universities, or even UCD, University College Dublin, is one of the finest for business-related studies, economics, UCD in Ireland.
Yeah.
It's opening up doors. So what you're doing is you're basically creating a future for your kids, if you have kids from this program, where once they have the passport, they have access to a free world. So I am so proud and so grateful to my parents for the fact that they relocated to Ireland back in 1992. And then I got my passport in 2005. So my dad was between UK and Ireland, and we established ourselves permanently from 99. So it's going to be 23 years this May. I'm so grateful to my dad and my mom for relocating to Ireland. The fact that I have an Irish passport, and again, like to now establish myself in Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, having an Irish passport helps to expand my business.
Right.
Whereas someone else with a different passport, it creates that hurdle, which again, it's not that of an issue, but why should you have an issue when if you're able to get it, why not get it?
Of course.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah. So that is definitely. I mean, thank you very much for all this. Talking about the advantages of an Irish passport. So that is, let's say it's a given advantage. I mean, people, of course, why they want to relocate because of these benefits. Because of these advantages, and who actually want to relocate? It is those, with the poorer passports, let's say, or disadvantaged passports. So, but let's talk about some real requirements now. For example, if a person wants to relocate to Ireland through, this program, or through any other, like we discussed, like standard routes or any alternatives, how much investment minimum they're looking at?
So one of the biggest and one of the most lucrative investment programs is the enterprise investment program, which is 1 million euros. So what you do is you basically invest 1 million euros liquid funds into an Irish enterprise.
Okay.
But the best part is it can be an enterprise started by yourself, or you can put that into an enterprise which you particularly know. and you invest into that for 3 years, that is generating some revenue. It is creating minimum of 10 jobs per year.
Okay.
You're paying the taxes for those 10 employees per year.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately what the government wants is they don't want just people to come with cash and buy a passport. It's mostly like creating jobs, creating some tax revenue for the country.
Right.
You know, 1 million for 3 years, you basically get the PR, the permanent residency, within like a couple of months once you have invested the money. After 2 years, you're eligible to apply for permanent citizenship. When I say permanent citizenship, you apply for permanent residency, not sorry, permanent citizenship, permanent residency. After 5 years, once you're qualified, once you've met the necessary requirements, such as your criminal background check, the funds are clean, you have generated enough tax revenue for the country, all those particular requirements, what happens is then you're able to apply for the Irish passport citizenship program, which takes roughly another 6 to 9 months. That's that. It's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, there was a case back in the day where you're allowed to invest into a property, qualifying property, which Portugal still allows, but unfortunately Ireland doesn't anymore. So you cannot just buy 1 million worth of houses. It has to be a business. So you cannot create a property business and then generate rental revenue. It is one of those where you have to necessarily create jobs.
Right.
Fortunately, a lot of people who utilize this particular scheme, that particular investment scheme, they actually have genuine businesses and they're able to generate more than 10 jobs, and therefore it's smooth sail for them. That is one of the particular options.
Okay, you said 10 jobs. Is it required by law, like specifically 10?
Yes.
Or is it the case that, around 10, you have to be able to create every year? Like a company should be expanding. Like, how does it work?
The company should be expanding, yes, but minimum 10 jobs in total, in entirety, minimum 10 jobs.
All right.
But if you have a bigger business, if you create 50 jobs, well and good, then you're covered. If you create 9 in the first year, it's a 3-year investment program. If you create 9 in the first year, maybe 2 in the next year, that's also acceptable.
Oh, okay. So you can spread it through 3-year period, right?
3 years, exactly. Yeah, you can create spread it through. So it's not one of those where you have to create 10 jobs from get-go. No.
Right.
But it is one of those programs where you have to create a minimum of 10 jobs over a course of.
How about the investment? Like, investment should come in one bulk, or can it be spread into 3 years as well?
So it's basically, you have to put that 1 million at least for 3 years. So you cannot touch those funds, even though they're your funds. The government is not taking charge of those funds, but you're invested in that company, and that company is expanding. So that 1 million is basically, you can use it as your capital to basically expand your business, to grow your business, and also to start your business. So it's basically paid up capital in a way.
Sure.
So if you're an investor, you come with 1 million euros, you're invested in your business, you created 10 jobs, you're paying from that 1 million, but then you have to maintain that 1 million over the course of 3 years. So you're basically paying into it. And then, so that's pretty much it here.
Right.
What you can also do is you can also invest in a fund, approved investment fund. So a lot of these funds, which are regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland and with the Bank of Ireland and all those, which are basically investment funds.
Right.
You can, but that has to have a minimum fund size of 20 million euros.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I would not advise for that particular investment route, because funds traditionally in Ireland after the 2008 financial crisis haven't been performing well. So it is not something that I would, as a financial, someone with a finance background and as a financial manager, I would not advise on that, because you'd not be generating enough revenue investing into a fund as compared to creating a business and basically doing your own business and expanding that business. So you can start up a consultancy firm or an IT firm, and there is a lot of demand for services in Ireland. It is a service-based economy. It is not a manufacturing-based economy like China or India. It's a service-based economy. It's a consumption-based economy. From an economics point of view, the growth prospect for an IT company in Ireland are colossal.
Sure.
This is why all those major US companies are based there.
Also, some of the other citizenship by investment programs, like in the Caribbean, for example, the investment requirement changes based upon the number of people applying. For example, if for one person, generally speaking, they require between 100 and 150,000 USD investment. But if it's a family of 4, it doubles basically. It becomes 200,000, 250,000 and stuff. How about in Ireland? Does it
So in
change?
Ireland,
Yeah.
the requirements, monetary requirements don't change. That's a very excellent question, Jasur. And the monetary requirements don't change. However, any of your dependents, let's say your kids who are over the age of 26, they will have to apply on their own.
All right.
They would not qualify under your scheme. So
But
your
it's 26,
spouse,
right? I mean, this is also very
26 years
generous,
old.
actually.
It is very generous. Of course,
Yeah.
usually it's 18 or 19,
18,
18 years
yeah,
old.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and this is 26. So this is a 26-year-old. And
Mhm.
also your spouse is under your scheme automatically. So no matter what age the spouse, whatever, so that's covered. So your spouse and kids, all the kids up to the age of 26 are covered in that particular scheme. Because what you're doing is de facto, what you're doing is you are generating your own work permit, your own residence permit. The spouse is basically on your residence permit, and then your kids are on your dependent visa. So just like your kids in China, they're on your dependent visa in Shanghai. And then your wife can also be spouse visa. So something similar. And 26 is a very generous, so usually it's 18. So the monetary requirements don't change, to answer your question.
All right.
I'll also talk about there are other mechanisms in Ireland. There's a real estate investment trust, which is basically REITs. So REITs are basically what you do is a pool of collective investment scheme. What that is basically, it's a listed company on the stock market of Ireland. So Irish Stock Exchange, ISE.
Okay.
They basically have pool of properties. Then they let them out, property development, they develop properties, rent them out, so on and so forth. And then you're investing in that company, which is basically doing property development or renting out property or generating revenue. So REITs are one of the lucrative investment schemes for investors who cannot necessarily afford to buy to let properties in that particular country.
Okay.
So what they do, so you're basically diversifying the risk and mitigating the risk because you're diversifying your portfolio. But for that, it is 2 million euros, unfortunately. It's not 1 million, it doubles up and you have to invest again for 3 years. So why it's 2 million? Because you're generating revenue on that. Of course, when you're doing your own business, you will be generating revenue, of course, but this is also where you're not doing any work.
Yeah.
What you're doing, you're able to basically just invest in that.
Kind of a passive income, passive investment.
Passive income,
Right,
exactly.
right.
It's kind of a passive income.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically after 3 years, you can divest 50%. And then after a year later, you can divest 25%. And after 5 years, you're able to pull out your 2 million.
What is the average? What is the average ROI for this 2 million? Yeah,
5-6%, to be honest. A REIT would easily generate 4 to 5%. But I would, again, if you have a genuine business, Jasur, I would recommend going that route. You generate more revenue, but you would be able to generate 4 to 5% on those REITs per year.
All right.
Before taxes is now.
Got it.
Yeah.
So,
And with this, the funds are not liquid for the first 3 years. After 3 years, again, as I said, 50% of the shares. After a year later, so in the 4th year, another 25, so that's 75%. And after the 5th year, you're able to pull out the remaining 25%. Or if you haven't liquidated before, pull out all the 100%. So you have to wait at least 5 years. But then after those 5 years, you qualify for the citizenship program.
Okay.
So once you get your passport, you basically pull out your money if you want to. Another one is an endowment and a donation option, which is basically donating 500,000 euros.
Oh, that's
500,000 euros
okay.
To a qualifying philanthropic project. And there's a loophole in that where a lot of cases in the past from Chinese and Indian investors, what they have done is they have invested into cultural programs or even sports programs. So in Ireland, there's something called GAA, Gaelic Athletic Association. Gaelic is one of those, Gaelic football is one of the traditional Irish sports.
Yeah.
And a lot of small town GA associations constantly require funds because they don't get the funding by the central or the state government.
Right.
So because of that, they are, for them, 500,000 is like basically a lifeline that is going to last them for a lifetime. And a lot of people, what they do is they are investors in the past, what they've done is they have invested those 500,000 euros. After a couple of years, once they've qualified, once they've got the passports and everything, they have pulled those 500,000 back. Maybe donated 50,000 or something. They pulled out like 450,000.
Right.
That is the loophole. But I would advise against that because once if you're caught with that, that is illegal.
Of course.
And the consequences, legal consequences are not worthwhile, to be very honest with you, with all the legal requirements, paperwork, this and that. So I would not suggest for that particular because you're literally handing in 500,000 euros and you're not generating any revenue from a business point of view. It makes no sense. So I would advise against that option. But let's say if you've got 100 million, you just give 500,000, it makes sense. Other than that, I would not advice on that particular aspect. One more thing with Ireland is that Ireland allows dual citizenship as well.
Mhm.
So no matter how many passports you have, you can always say that I am a dual citizen of Ireland and that particular country. Unlike the US, Ireland allows dual citizenship.
Mhm. By the way,
So yes,
okay, yeah, talking about dual citizenships, we need to also mention about the tax
yes,
tax policy of the countries that you are a citizen of. For example, some of the countries, they don't tax your worldwide income, but some
no,
do. So how about the case in Ireland? Do they
yes.
tax your worldwide income?
So I was getting onto that point. Unlike the US, where you're taxed on a global income, whereas Ireland is part of CRS program, Common Reporting Standards. So as part of the tax treaty of CRS, Ireland doesn't dual tax you. There's no double taxation in Ireland. So it's part of a double
Okay.
taxation agreement. So if you generate certain revenue in one particular country and you pay tax on that revenue in that country, you're not liable for tax obligations in Ireland. However, you will be liable for tax obligations for revenue generated in Ireland and Ireland alone, unless you want to pool that investment or that funds
Let's say,
or
for
their income
example,
into Ireland.
okay, let's illustrate. For example, a client from Turkey.
Yes,
We work with people from Turkey as well, and most of the time, obviously, I mean, these people, the applicants, they are business people, right? They have
yes,
established businesses, like physical established businesses. In
yes,
Turkey, for example, they have a small manufacturing business, textile business, and obviously, for relocation, they're not going to close that business, right? They will get this, they apply for this in the citizenship through investment. But once they become Irish citizen, will their income be taxed in Turkey? In Ireland, I
no,
mean, yeah.
no, in Ireland it won't be. No, in Ireland it won't be because they're generating revenue. As I said, they'll be generating revenue in Turkey. So because they're generating revenue in Turkey, they'll not be liable for tax incomes in Ireland because it's not being generated here.
They don't have to
Unless, of course,
report as well, right? They don't
they
have
don't
to
have to
report
report. No,
to
they don't have to
declare.
report.
Okay, all
No,
right.
they don't have to report. Yeah. And they also, unless, of course, they want to. However, Irish corporation tax rates are so low. Sometimes it's actually beneficial, as I said to you earlier. Apple reroutes all its EU profits via Ireland because it's more beneficial for Apple due to the
Yeah,
low
exactly.
corporation
Yeah,
tax rate, 12.5%.
yeah.
So then again, this is the job of your tax advisor and your financial advisor, and then it depends on amount of revenue you're generating. So every case is different, but no, you don't have to report, and it's part of the double taxation agreement.
All right, got it, got it. Okay, seems like a very sweet deal actually. Because actually, before we started this, I've been thinking about a lot of programs as well. And like I mentioned during the video, some of the Caribbean countries are facing challenge in terms of visa-free travel. Why? Because again, recent conflict between Russia and Ukraine and stuff like that. So European Parliament is actually considering that not allowing some people with Caribbean passports visa-free into their territory because, again, Caribbean passports, they have a little bit of maybe, although they are very strict in terms of due diligence and checking people's backgrounds, but still people find a way around it, especially those oligarchs supporting the
Yes.
aggression and stuff like that. So but comparing those Caribbean programs to program in Ireland, I think Irish passport, Irish program has a lot of benefits, obviously, yeah, over those Caribbeans.
Of course, most definitely. And the biggest advantage is that just so Ireland is part of the EU. So no matter what, being part of the EU, you're accessing the EU's system, of course.
Yeah.
And also you're able to work and live anywhere within the EU. So it's not necessarily just getting an Irish passport and establishing yourself in Ireland. From a business point of view, as a businessman yourself and myself, when you're expanding the business and you're basically expanding into all of EU. So once you have an Irish passport, you can basically come to UK. And as I said, with the Ireland and UK's agreement, You're able to come, go anywhere in Germany, Portugal, Spain, whatever, and establish your business. So you're having that document which allows you to
Right.
basically expand.
Right.
Whereas with the Caribbean passport, yes, you're getting a travel document, visa-free access, but that's pretty much it. You may be able to expand within the Caribbean. That's pretty much it. But then if you want to use that particular document and expand your business, let's say in Germany, it's going to be the same procedure as starting from ground zero. Whereas with Ireland, you've crossed that barrier, the first step, and then now you're able to expand. So that's one of the biggest advantages of having an Irish passport.
Sure.
Tax treaty, tax systems, this and that, and educational institutions, everything. There is a lot of benefit. And also, one more thing from an economic point of view, Jasur, Ireland was one of the last countries in the EU to get the recession, and it was one of the last countries to go out of the recession. But it was one of the first countries to be out of the recession due to the austerity scheme by the Irish government back in 2010, 11, 12, 13. We were paying high interest rates to the IMF for the loans that we got during the 2008 financial crisis, but due to the austerity measures, Ireland was able to walk out of the recession. And in 2015, 16, 17, Ireland was one of the largest growing economies in all of EU. Inflation rate is much lower than in the UK.
Right.
Economic GDP growth is one of the highest in the EU. So it pays to be in Ireland. Now inflation due to the pandemic, it's quite high. I would give you on that for sure. But overall, cost of living in Ireland is much lower among all its Western economies, Western European counterparts.
Yeah, definitely. And recently I watched a YouTube video, another nomad, digital nomad guy. He's quite famous, but I'm not going to mention in this video because I don't have any relationship with that person, or nor do I know him. But one particular experience he mentioned in the video was very interesting. Like, he purchased St. Kitts and Nevis passport for 150 grand, I think, and through donation, if I'm not mistaken. And he said that recently he traveled. He's a U.S. citizen, by the way. He actively is trying to renounce his U.S. citizenship, but getting rid of U.S. citizenship is not that easy. So recently he traveled to Hungary and some of the other European countries with his St. Kitts and Nevis passport. And then, very interesting experience. He said at the border, they asked for his, first of all, they looked at the passport, and they interestingly, the border control, they didn't recognize the passport, and they said, what is it? Which country is it?
Okay.
And he had to explain it. Okay, this is St. Kitts and Nevis passport. It's an island in Caribbean island nation. And then they said, okay, we're going to check. Do you need a visa to Hungary? They asked him. And he said, no, because of the agreement with European Union, we have visa-free access on this passport, so I don't have to get a visa. And the border control, they checked it online, and then they said, okay, yeah, apparently you have visa-free access. But, however, we would like to ask you to present your second passport. And we want to see if you have visa-free access on your second passport as well to Hungary, And this brings me to that earlier point that I talked. Like, if you're, for example, if you purchase Caribbean, this passport on one of the Caribbean islands, and your second passport, for example, let's say Uzbekistan or Turkey or Kazakhstan, from one of these Central Asian or Asian countries, is not visa-free to European Union, even with the passport, with the Caribbean passport, probably you will not be allowed to enter the country. Probably, most likely. Because, again, these things are coming up now. People trying to find a way, loopholes in the legislation, and get those passports, visa-free access, and they want to relocate to Europe with those. Because Caribbean passport gives you access to the UK for 6 months, If you just enter UK and stay there for 6 months, visa-free. But I don't think it will be the case for somebody who purchased it from Central Asia, compared to this US guy. Because at the border control, they saw his US passport, and then only after that, they let him enter the country. They said, okay, you have 2 visa-free passports, not 1.
Generally, the passport that you present from an immigration point of view, just so that passport that you present takes precedence over your other passport that you're not willing to show.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes immigration, I have been on the brunt of that. Sometimes I was in Armenia last August, and I had to present my Pakistani passport because my place of birth is Pakistan on my Irish passport. And entering the country wasn't an issue. The lady just looked at me, she stamped at the back of the passport, but exiting the country, they made me wait 15 minutes because they were like, this is error on the system. And I was like, bullshit, there was no error on the system. They were just checking. So, and I wouldn't say it wasn't a fault of the immigration official, but what happened was just that he was like, are you going to go to Edinburgh from there? So what he was confused was a Pakistani born with an Irish passport traveling to London, why not traveling to Ireland? And that kind of, a complacency by immigration officials, even in Hong Kong back in 2016, I was asked, but this is an Irish passport, it's not a British passport. I'm like, well, it's an Irish passport. That I wasn't really, what happened was that day where he was like, are you going to go to Edinburgh after this? I'm like, why would I go to Edinburgh? That's in Scotland. I'm like, you mean Ireland? He's like, oh yeah, Ireland. I'm like, no, I'm not going to Ireland. I live in the UK. I live in London. And with this passport, I'm not allowed to live in London. And then he made me wait. Then he called up his supervisor, this and that. And I'm like, what's the harm here? It's visa free, visa on arrival, which I have. And that's that. You have scanned my passport. I'm leaving the country, done nothing wrong. And that's it. They let me go after 15 minutes, but that's scrutiny because they were just like wondering why. But they didn't ask me to show my other passport.
Oh, okay.
Only once I've been asked to show my other passport was because with a Pakistani passport, I get my entry stamps on the Pakistani passport, exit stamps on the Irish passport. So when I first entered China back in 2016, I was asked to show why do I only have exit stamps on the Irish passport and not the entry stamps. I just said, this is that, that's that. But other than that, whenever you present an Irish passport, it makes no difference whatsoever.
Right.
Okay, because Irish passport takes precedence. It's one of the strongest passports in the world. Most people know it's visa free. I've been to Japan. I've been to 42 countries. Just so I've never had a problem with an Irish passport except for Armenia and this and that. Once in Japan, I was asked like, "Why are you here?" I was like, "Holiday. That's it. Go." Be it Indonesia, be it South Korea, be it whatever. Not an issue whatsoever with an Irish passport. So they don't necessarily, because it's visa free for 185 countries. So in Spain, because I traveled from a smaller airport, not one of those major airports from Barcelona or Valencia or Madrid, I was like, why were you here and this and that? I was just because unfortunately, there were some bombings back in Madrid about 12, 15 years ago. And it was myself and this other friend of mine from India, two brown guys at the airport, unfortunately, among all the white people. So they were just like a bit cautious. They brought us to our room, but it was like 10 minutes of questioning and checking. And I was like, I just have clothes and chargers and this and that. There's nothing. I'm just a tourist here. I can show you pictures. But that's pretty much it. But that's just my face, unfortunately, the brown face. But other than that, to be honest, I've never had an issue.
Okay.
I am, as I said, very grateful for the Irish passport, visa free, and be able to travel. So especially within the EU, not an issue.
Okay, then. Let's quickly compare, because I was watching the timing as well. So let's quickly compare Irish citizenship by investment or relocation program through citizenship to the one in Netherlands. So what kind of options you have in Netherlands?
Netherlands, it's pretty much similar. It's about 500,000 euros, I believe. But Netherlands, because it's not an English speaking country, I usually go for Portugal. Portugal is more lucrative because of the lower investment requirements.
Oh, so Portugal. I wanted to say Portugal.
Portugal, because our Netherlands and Portugal are similar, but Portugal, it's about 500,000 euros. Into a property. You can invest into a property, and you have to maintain those funds for a couple of years. Once you get your PR, which is after 2 years, you get your PR. Once you get your PR, like work visa, basically be able to stay visa within, like, as you invest the money. But after 2 years, you become a permanent resident. After the PR, you get your passport within 5 years. You can also bring that investment down to 350,000 euros if the property that you're investing is a grade 2 listed property, which is more than 30 years old, and in one of those periphery locations, not in the major cities. So if you're not investing in Lisbon, but investing in one of those villages or something, it can go down to 350. And if you're going to a very remote place, it can also go down to 280,000. But then that's a derelict property, which you have to basically reconstruct and refurbish and renovate and so on and so forth. So that will cost you additional capital to basically do that. So that is, you can also start up a business in Portugal. Portugal again has the same EU healthcare systems, educational, so on and so forth, but it doesn't give you the benefit of living or working in the UK, just like an Irish passport, even though the investment requirements are less. Now, some clients invest in Portugal, and also for Portugal, it's 18 years old for the dependent kids, unlike Ireland at 26 years old. Some clients go for Portugal when they have young kids. They go for Portugal because they just want something cheaper relatively to Ireland. It's half the price. And also, once they get the Portuguese passport, they're like, we can go anywhere within the EU. We don't necessarily have to go to the UK. We don't mind going to Ireland or whatever. So that is the major difference between the both of the schemes.
And by the way, let me also ask you about the language requirements. For example, most of the this citizenship by investment programs, they don't have this kind of thing, but still, you know, we are talking about European Union countries, and European Union countries, you know, have to actually, they have to match the requirements of these programs with the requirements of the European Parliament, right? In order to not affect the economy, or, you know, not let some incorrect people in and give them residency, right? So any language requirements in Ireland and Portugal?
Ireland, it's an English-speaking country, so as long as you're able to speak English, are perfectly fine. There's no requirement, because Irish, even though it's a national language,
no need to prove it with any test results, anything.
No.
Language
So you don't have to necessarily present. No, you don't have to present like an IELTS test or a TOEFL exam or something. No, for the universities, yes, you might, because if you have
qualified. How about for citizenship? When it comes to getting the citizenship, you don't have to really present.
So unlike the UK, you don't have to pass a history check or a language test in Ireland. Only for the educational requirements is that if you have graduated from a high school that is a non-English speaking high school, or your high school, like your certificate is a non-English speaking, then you'll have to pass the TOEFL or the IELTS exam. IELTS mostly in Ireland, and you have to have a minimum score of 6.5 band. But that's pretty much it. For the citizenship, there's no requirement for a history check, or when I say history check, like the Irish history exam, or like even educational. For Portugal, I believe there is. You have to have proficiency in Portuguese language.
That is more challenging.
That is more challenging, of course. And also, one more thing about Portugal that I'm going to mention is that although the cost of living is lower than Ireland, but with the Portuguese visa, it doesn't give you access to EU. It gives you access to EU travel-wise, but it doesn't give you access to study-wise with the Portuguese permanent residence. Only with a passport it does, but not with the permanent residency. So let's say after 2 years, when you qualify in Portugal with your residency program, you cannot send your kids on that to study in Germany or France or whatever. They have to study within Portugal. You have to have a passport, physical passport in hand, and your kids, and you can send them to Germany, France, Spain, Italy, whatever, to study. Whereas with an Irish PR, you are able to, Ireland has, of course, very good educational establishments, but you can also send your kids abroad to study as well.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that's quite a difference, I think. Yeah.
Major difference.
Major difference, especially for people with young kids.
Exactly.
They need to consider this fact. All right.
They do. And one more thing about Portugal that I'm going to mention is Portugal has minimum residency requirements. So during the first 5 years, you have to maintain a residency requirement of 14 days per year. That's it. Whereas in Ireland, you have to maintain 6 months. However, what I always recommend to my clients is maintain at least 185 days. Because when you go apply for the citizenship actually for the passport itself, to show that you have lived in the country for 6 months for a year for the last 5 years, it just increases your chances substantially. And you're paid taxes and everything. Basically, you're not just throwing money and getting a passport.
Of course.
So maintain a residency requirement of 185 days. And again, in Ireland, with the low corporation tax rate of 12.5% versus Portugal's of 25%, it makes sense to live in the country.
Of course. Well, you know, at the end of the day, applicants want to relocate. You know, they will not be traveling. Yeah, most of them, especially with the pandemic right now. You know, traveling. You know, It's not like before, like you can, travel freely and stuff, especially when there are, quarantine requirements in some countries.
Exactly. So having an EU passport, there are not necessarily any quarantine requirements nowadays if you're traveling within the EU, but if you're traveling from outside of the EU,
Yeah,
then you may be subject to quarantine. UK doesn't have that quarantine requirement anymore, but certain other countries do have 3-day,
right.
5-day, 7-day requirements of quarantine. But
Right.
the way it's heading towards, that's going to be eased very soon. Also in Portugal, you can invest in arts and other research activities as well. But those are not that sought after, and it's very difficult to invest in arts because, like, to understand about fine art and then this and that, you can do it, but it's not something that I recommend to my clients. Property is the best bet because, of course, you're generating revenue from that property.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, so thank you very much once again.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, we can maybe find another time to make some videos on other countries in the European Union. And once again, guys, if you have any questions to Rishi or myself, you can, get in touch with us. We're going to leave the contact details below the video. And also, both Rishi's company in UK and Ireland, they help clients get, citizenship through investment, and they can, put you in the right direction by, assisting you in the process, like A to Z. Same here. We work with, we are located in Shanghai, as most of you know, and we mostly work with, local clients here. A lot of Chinese clients wanting to expand their businesses in different countries, and also at the same time, we focus more on Central Asian countries where I am from, and Russian-speaking clients as well. So yeah, if any questions, get in touch. And I believe we will try to make some subtitles below the video, in Russian or in my language, so that people can understand. Yeah, once again, thank you, Rishi. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jasur, for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So let's stop recording.